You mentioned that you are pregnant with your 6th baby, and that is so exciting. Congratulations on that. You also mentioned you've had all C-sections in the past, and this does put you at higher risk for certain complications like placenta previa, placenta accreta, placenta percreta. Now, a placenta previa is where the placenta decides to attach over the cervix, and there's nothing you can do if this happens, but the doctor would note this at your 20-week routine ultrasound. They would see that the placenta is either over the cervix or near the cervix, and this causes issues because if you start to contract or dilate at all, it causes massive bleeding. And so there's certain things that your doctor would talk to you about, like avoiding intercourse, going to the hospital as soon as you see any bleeding, and those sorts of things. It also requires a C-section, which you're planning on having again anyway, so that wouldn't be any different to you. Another complication that can occur with repeat C-sections is a placenta accreta or percreta. And this is where the placenta attaches into deeper layers of the uterus or even other abdominal structures, making it so that it doesn't detach nicely after the delivery of the baby. And what should happen after the delivery of the baby is that the placenta detaches, it's delivered, and then the uterus cramps down really tightly over all the vessels that we're feeding the baby, kind of acting like a tourniquet, and it controls bleeding. If the placenta can't come out or there's any retained pieces, then the uterus can't cramp down, and those vessels that we're feeding your baby continue to bleed, and this can lead to hemorrhage. So in women who have this, we anticipate possibly having to do a hysterectomy or removing the uterus to control the bleeding. Those are precautions that are taken. We have blood available because the risk of bleeding is much higher. But this condition can be noted on ultrasound in some cases, and your doctor may look for those signs of complications. If they've looked for the complications, they haven't seen any, then that's great, and you can be reassured by that. Although we always do keep in mind that you are at higher risk because you've had more C-sections, just in case something happens that we didn't foresee. As with any patient, we watch you very closely for signs of postpartum hemorrhage after delivery. The most likely time that a woman's going to hemorrhage is during the first hour, and so whether you have a C-section or a vaginal delivery, bleeding is going to be the same. We watch closely for signs of complications. We check your uterus to make sure that it's cramping down tightly over all those vessels. We watch your bleeding, and if there's any signs of increased bleeding, we can in most cases treat it with medication. The 3 most common causes of postpartum hemorrhage are: number 1, uterine atony, or basically your uterus is tired and it's a muscle. Its job is not done after labor. It still needs to cramp down all of those vessels and control your bleeding. And if it's not in the mood to do that, it's too tired for one reason or another, and there are lots of different circumstances surrounding labor that can increase the chances of that happening, then you bleed too much afterwards. But giving you medications that stimulate your uterus to contract can help control the bleeding. Another cause of postpartum hemorrhage is a retained placental piece. And so if this is the case, the doctor can go do a D&C, where they scrape the lining of the uterus and get out the retained placental pieces, and that usually helps the bleeding to stop as the uterus can then cramp down. Another cause of bleeding might be some sort of unrepaired laceration or cut inside, and the doctor can reevaluate for that and see if there's anything that's just oozing or bleeding that can be repaired. Postpartum hemorrhage actually remains the number 1 cause of maternal death in the United States, as well as other countries that are more underdeveloped. It occurs in 1 to 5% of deliveries, and so this is why we watch so closely for signs of complication and try to jump on it before it gets too serious. Don't hesitate to talk with your doctor about the concerns that you're having, and they can shed more light on the situation based on their knowledge of your individual circumstances. But if you have any other questions in the future for me, I'd be happy to answer them for you on our Facebook page at facebook.com/InnerMountainMoms, and recommend us to your friends and family too.